Okay, sure. So I believe we stopped at this slide, so I'll just restart this slide. So coming to the introduction, as it's self-explanatory, you briefly introduce the topic and it must be relevant. But the purpose of writing an introduction or background is to convey the purpose of writing the paper as well, right? Because see, most of the people who actually end up reading your paper will be the academia, the people who are actually aware to some extent of what what you have written about already. So we don't want to be lectured by reading your introduction. We just want to get an idea as to what you're writing in that paper. That's it. So you need to also convey the purpose of writing the paper, because most likely you'll be writing about something that's rare. So you need to mention the rarity of the condition, or you need to mention the gap in literature that you're trying to fill. And of course, most likely or not, your study has something to add. It has substantial implications that you'd like to mention. So this is a paper that I had authored, and this is one of the most important points which I feel is sometimes missing even in really good studies. You need to mention what you're writing, what you're reporting, what your study intends to do in the last few lines of the introduction. So like you can see here, I have highlighted that in light of limited evidence in the given context, we conducted this study to investigate the phenomenon of immune dysregulation in cases with SSPA. So we clearly are describing what our study intends to do. So this is a crucial part. It's a crucial component of the introduction which you shouldn't miss. And you need to be crisp and to the point. You shouldn't be vague or non-specific. And also always remember, you need to I can't stress up on this enough, you need to make an outline. You can't miss it, because outline gives a flow and structure to the paper. And I'll show you an example of how an outline is made in the next slide. So let's say, I'll just give an example. Let's say your paper is about neoplastic meningitis. So you shouldn't be having sections or paragraphs explaining what is a neoplasm, right? That's irrelevant. Your topic is neoplastic meningitis. You can as well start with it. Do not have lengthy write-ups on, let's say, infectious meningitis. It's totally irrelevant. Instead, your outline should look something like this. What is neoplastic meningitis? Its burden, the prevalence, incidence, basically the epidemiology, and what is already known about the topic, clinical features, a word on the diagnosis, the prognosis, and what our study intends to do, or what your review intends to do. So the last component is something I already iterated before. It's called occupying the niche. It comes under the Swales CARS model. I'll explain about it later. So this is another meta-analysis that I had authored, and you can see the different components of the introduction which I just mentioned. So initially, we introduce what it is, the global burden, the epidemiology, and the known information which is already published in literature regarding it. And in the end, you can see we've written that hence we sought to conduct a meta-analysis to evaluate the clinical outcomes post-stroke and post-stroke intervention. So we clearly are describing what we intend to do, right? So that's how an introduction should end ideally. You shouldn't miss that. Now, this is the Swales CARS model. It's used for writing the introduction. It has three moves that an author can actually do: establishing a territory, establishing a niche, and occupying the niche. So it's quite self explanatory. You can read up the entire model. And what I explained before is basically the same thing. Coming to methodology, it differs according to the study type, of course. Depends on whether you're writing an original study or a review. So you have different subheadings under that. But there are certain key elements that you shouldn't miss. And methodology is that section. It's what I like to call the sweet spot of any paper, because it actually explains how much the authors actually understand research, right? The rigor of the paper is actually shown in the methodology. So here are some clear key elements that I feel should be there in any research paper. You should mention the study design. It's very important, whether it's prospective or retrospective in nature, whether it's cohort, how many arms are there, uh, is it a case control study, how are the controls matched, is it a cross sectional study, and the sample size, inclusion exclusion criteria, whether it's with respect to subjects or articles if it's a review, data collection methods, data analysis. So basically need to be as detailed as possible in the methodology, and the more detailed you are, the more evidence you'll be ending up adding your paper will end up adding. And also when you submit to any journal, right, the peer reviewers, they get a rough idea, they get a clear idea in fact as to what's the strength of the study, what's the quality of the study by just reading the methodology. And of course you need to include figures and flow diagrams if applicable. We have the Prisma flow charts for systematic reviews, but even if it's a narrative review, consider dropping in, synthesizing a flow diagram. Coming to the discussion, so discussion is one section that really tests the writing skills of a researcher. Many people really, even to this date, many researchers also don't understand how a discussion section is actually written. So this general outline that I prepared, uh, it it would suffice actually for any discussion section that you would want to write. So I would suggest you guys to maybe screenshot this and refer to it in future if you're writing the discussion section. So the first thing that you would want to start off in the discussion section is to review or restate your study's findings. And then after that, you'd interpret the results of your study. What do they mean? Like in results section, all you do is you just report the numbers, you report the results of your analysis, different statistical tests that you have used. But then what do all those numbers mean? You need to interpret that here, right? Not copy pasting the results, but what does it mean, right? And then after that, you try to draw comparisons with similar studies in literature. And of course, whatever you conclude from the findings of your paper, they have clinical implications. So you need to mention what implications they have. And do not forget to critically appraise and iterate the limitations of the study. Every study has limitations, no study is perfect. And the more clearly you describe them, it looks good, it reflects good on the authors actually, because that reflects the originality of your paper and also how much you understand research. And of course, and then the conclusion and highlights. You need to always end the discussion. If there's no specific conclusion section, you need to end the discussion summarizing the key findings and highlighting what your paper actually has to add to literature. So please note that while you write research papers, it's not about paraphrasing other papers. Paraphrasing is something that many researchers do. I've seen many people just read one or two papers, they read reviews, and they feel like, okay, we can write our paper. They copy paste huge chunks of those papers and then they just try to paraphrase them. They use different AI, maybe, they use, they paraphrase it and it doesn't look good because that's not how a research paper is written. How it's ideally written is you need to read multiple papers on the topic. Take your time, devote some amount of time every single day to the topic that you're writing about, and understand the subject well. Get an overall understanding of the subject, because see, at this stage we are not experts in the field, right? You're a medical student, so this is something you'll have to do before you write any research paper. It's something like a responsibility actually. And then after that, you build a knowledge core in your mind, and then you draft an outline, like I mentioned. So you draft an outline and you expand on it, you consolidate all the paragraphs, and then you review and improvise on the quality. So this is how you write any research paper. This is the structure or the anatomy of a research paper. It was written by, this figure I found in a book written by Taylor Burroughs. I would suggest you guys to read it. It's a brilliant book on how you should be writing research articles for publication. It contains the components of a research paper, which I basically described in my previous slides. And these are some other readings which I would suggest you to read. There's this book by Albert Tim, Winning the Publications Game, The Smart Way to Write Your Paper and Get It Published. It's an excellent book. Actually, it provides practical advice on how to craft a well-structured paper, and also certain common pitfalls to avoid, such as plagiarism and poor citation practices. So plagiarism, I'd like to add a couple of points on that. So plagiarism isn't an issue at all if you actually follow uh, the research methods you're supposed to follow uh, honestly. Because if you read enough papers, if you write a paper on your own, if you make an outline and you write the paper the way it's supposed to, practicing good writing practices. And there's this other paper by Elenia D. Kalestinova. It's on how to write your first research paper. I think this paper is published in the Yale Journal of Biology and Medicine. It's an excellent paper that it describes the outline of how a paper is written, and it describes a few questions you need to answer in each of those sections. I suggest you to read that. And this is something that I already suggest you guys to read, a book by Taylor Burrows. So the next thing I would recommend all of you to do is to get familiarized with the different study designs, case reports, series, editorials, commentaries, and then you have original studies like cross-sectional studies, cohort studies, case control studies, different types of reviews, narrative scoping, systematic, meta-analysis. So these different, what do they mean? Like how are they conducted? So very important for you to understand what they mean, and it's basics of research. You can't proceed without knowing what they are and how they are conducted. There's this Substack. It's a platform for writing by Asad Naveen. So he writes brilliant articles. I would recommend you guys to go and read up, read them up. Statistics, it's a very useful skill set, and I feel that it's not something. It's not a compulsion to learn statistics, but I feel whenever you are aware of statistics, at least basic statistics, right, it sets your bar high. It augments your level of understanding of the analysis involved in the study, and you feel that you have a grasp over the paper. You understand papers at a different level, actually. And I would at least recommend you guys to learn basic statistics at least. So what does this mean? Understand what are the different types of data: ordinal, continuous, and what are different types of distributions, T distributions, Z distributions. What are the commonly used parametric, non-parametric tests? T-test, ANOVA, chi-square, Pearson, Spearman correlations, Wilcoxon tests. And what do things like odds ratios, risk ratios, hazard ratios mean? So it's very important that you understand these things. This is the basics of research. And you don't have to learn advanced statistics, right? I mean, you can consider learning regression and how to generate forest plots and all that for meta-analysis. But what is more important is you learn basic statistics first. So this will help you even understand uh, what has happened behind the scenes when it comes to analysis in any research paper. Next, coming to a question that's asked by many people, actually, like how do I come up with a research question? It's very hard, actually, and it's something we all have faced, right? So from what I've understood, it always comes with experience. It does come with experience. And how do you start off with research? You begin with collaborating with experts in the field, with your mentors, maybe your friends who have more experience than you. So this is how you understand how topics are, how they're drafted, how they're made. So you need to discuss, you need to brainstorm new ideas with people every now and then. So they will tell you whether it is feasible or not. So it takes time to be able to determine the feasibility of an idea, and it's a knack that it develops eventually, right? So people who are in the field, people who know how research works, they know that they know if a study idea that you have, whether it's feasible or not, and it's something that you will eventually develop with time. What is a good research question? It should be something that's clear, concise, and specific. It should focus on a particular topic. It should be answerable through research. That is, it should be feasible, right? And it should be relevant. It should be important, and it should be interesting. And those are the things. I mean, these are the elements, and those things were also iterated in this paper by Matic. Okay, and this was it's an interesting paper. I recommend you guys to read it. These are the elements that are part of any research question: the relevance, originality, and rigor. Now, originality is something, originality or novelty, it's something that people struggle with because it's difficult for people to come up with ideas that are novel and that haven't been done before. But please understand that more than novelty, I mean, yes, novelty does matter because at the end of the day, you want your studies to get published. But when it comes to original studies, right, uh, you can always come up with a replication study. You can come up with an updated meta-analysis. So these are things that are published, right? And whenever we do, let's say, a meta-analysis, we include many original studies which have the same research question, which have homogeneous outcomes, and they have done pretty much the same thing, right? You are also adding something to the literature. Let's say your study has been done somewhere else in some other population. You can do it in your country. It might or might not yield different results, but definitely it is something that will add to literature, right? So don't be too bothered about originality or novelty, although it is something that matters. But when it comes to original research, it's something that you shouldn't be too much bothered about. Next, coming to publishing your paper, it's always important to choose an appropriate journal, and make sure you identify predatory journals. So like, let's say you publish a single paper, it's quite likely that your email will be your inbox will be filled with spam from spam emails from different kinds of predatory publishers saying you publish with us, you present with us, and so on and so forth. It's very important to identify them because there are many lists actually. There's one infamous list, you might have heard, Bial's list, and there are other lists, Cabell's list, and so on. So there's this paper you can read this paper up, and it explains how to identify a predatory journal. It's always important to avoid these, especially during the initial phase of your career, because it's very easy to get distracted and submit your papers here to just publish them for the sake of it and get a DOI. That's not important because trust me, I mean, these are seen as a black mark in your career in the long run. Eventually, you'll look back and you'll regret this. So always choose a journal that is indexed. I'm speaking with a priority order. So it should be indexed. It should be indexed in PubMed, Embase, any known database. It should have a decent impact factor. Uh, Search what an impact factor is, search what an H index is, learn what these uh, parametric parametrics are for a journal, and always choose a journal which has a decent impact factor, preferably more than one, right? And always, I mean, prefer a journal that is open access because that would mean that anyone can access it and read it, and you might end up receiving more citations in the long run. Although it's not required, but consider these things before you submit it to any journal. Go through every single guideline of the journal before submitting it, format your paper accordingly, and sort out references. And please make sure that you don't do it manually. Even to this date, they manually sort out references. One reference they pick up, and they individually try to convert it into different styles using certain websites. It's ridiculous because you have certain, let's say you have a review with 40 to 50 references, and you put yourself through the pain of citing every single study with a particular referencing style, and then you want to switch the journal. Now you can't sit and do that for like 50 references. So please learn to use softwares. They're very easy to use. There's Zotero, EndNote, Mendeley. Hardly it'll take 5-10 minutes to um, acquaint yourself with the user interface. You can watch videos on YouTube or anywhere. It's quite self-explanatory. In fact, you just have to explore the software for like 10-15 minutes. You'll understand how it works, and please consider learning them. And one more thing is to make efforts to include experts in the field as authors in the study. So this is something I'm telling out of experience, because preferably as a corresponding author, in fact. So please invite experts in the field. It could be people from departments in your college, it could be professors. Invite them to review your paper, to go through it and submit it as a corresponding author, because that's how the academia works, right? Especially, let's say you write a narrative review. Narrative reviews are mostly solicited in nature. No journal would want to accept a narrative review from a person who's not an expert in the field. So to improve your chances of publication, to add more value to your manuscript, um, please consider adding an expert in the field as an author. Some more insights that I'd like to share before I end my talk is relentless and persistent efforts is the key. Because what I've seen is that there are like many people, hundreds of people who approach mentors on a daily basis saying that I'm interested in research. What do I do? So what do we do? What do I do when someone approaches me? I give them clear cut instructions. Okay, these are the skills, exactly what I explained today. These are the skills you need to develop. You have to learn how to write scientifically. You have to learn the different study designs. You have to learn uh, maybe basic statistics. You have to familiarize yourself with softwares like Zotero. So these are basic skills that you need to develop as a researcher. But efforts is the key. It's very easy to get interested all of a sudden, one day be like, I want to do research. But it's only those who put in persistent efforts and who are consistent are the ones who actually end up publishing something and who reach a stage in their life when it comes to research. And please try to come out of the I have no clue, I have no idea phase. Understand that it is normal to feel this way. It is all right, it's perfectly fine, but it's okay in the initial phase, but it's not okay to dwell in it forever. There are people who have approached me 1 or 2 years back who were interested in research, and even to this date they're just interested in research. That's it. They're not actually gone ahead and done any kind of work. So it is important to put in efforts to understand how research works and how to actually do research. And please consider finding a mentor. It's very important. I had great mentors who helped me understand what research is, who have given me opportunities, and who have had a great contribution to who I am today. So this is where I'd like to end my talk. You can reach out to me on my email or LinkedIn, and if there are any question and answers, I'd love to take them. If there are any questions, I mean, I'd love to take them.
Thank you so much for the wonderful session. Very informative indeed. We do have some questions for you. So the first one is, how does one find a good research guide?
Okay. So identifying a research guide comes first from identifying what your field of interest is. Few people are attracted to, let's say, neurology or cardiology, nephrology, pulmonology. So you identify, even if you're not able to identify that, at least identify whether you're interested in medicine or research. These are very broad and it's very easy to know what you're interested in. Then what you do is you identify people who are closely who you can contact closely. For instance, it could be a professor, it could be a senior who has published in that field, right? It could be some professor from that department. Let's say you're interested in neurology, so you might find professors who are into research in the department of your college. Approach them, tell them you are interested in research, please guide me, please mentor me. Because typically what happens is all Indian colleges, all Indian universities, they have residents who work on different theses. They get published, they have to get published actually, so they hand over those projects, they involve you in those projects. So this is first hand research experience, right? So, what I would recommend you is to first understand what field of what is your field of interest. Identify people who are researching in that field of interest, who have published a lot. Go and explore ResearchGate or go and explore their profiles in Google Scholar, and drop them an email. If let's say you want to approach someone who's not in your university, who maybe who's in another country for that matter, drop them an email, and consider attaching your CV as well. Emailing people is the most important thing actually. And yeah, this is how you approach mentors actually. And very rarely, don't get disappointed. It's very hard to, I mean, the response rates are very less because everyone's busy in their lives. But don't give up actually, because finding a good mentor, it'll go a long way.
True. Thank you. So our next question is, can we publish research solo without any guide? And if yes, what about APCs?
Okay, research solo. So, see, research actually, the concept of research solo is not recommended and it's not promoted anywhere actually, because good research always comes with collaboration. It does come with collaboration. You need to identify people who you would want to work with. Many a times you might not find interested batchmates. You might find people who are interested in other colleges. Try to make a group, try to network with people, identify research teams to work with, because publishing solo is something I would not recommend unless you're writing an editorial, right? Editorials or maybe commentaries, viewpoints, these are some things that can be written solo. But always consider working in teams. It's always good to work in teams. And wonders happen when you work with teams. Wonders like systematic reviews, meta-analysis, they can't be done alone. Even guidelines from Cochrane say you can't have one person publishing it. You need at least two people. And in fact, most systematic reviews and meta-analysis have at least 5, 6, 7, 8 people. So I wouldn't recommend publishing it solo. And yeah, about APC, so that's a different topic altogether. There are different ways to counter APC. One is to, of course, uh, try and choose a journal which has no APC. But then let's say it does. Now, most journals actually they take APC for open access. You don't have to publish open access. You can publish it on a subscription-based model. And the other option is to actually, some people invite authors to review their papers and also contribute to the finances of the paper. So that's maybe another option. Or maybe there are certain, if in case you're fortunate enough to have authors in your team who are from nations where APCs are waived, so you can include them, as you can consider them to be your corresponding author, and in that case the APC would be waived.
Understood. I actually have a question, follow-up question for your answer.
Yeah.
Supposingly, if someone is in a situation where they don't have a lot of seniors to guide them and they're not able to get a grasp of their professors,
Yeah.
how would they collaborate with other students, maybe from other colleges in the country? What would be an appropriate way to connect with such interested students,
Okay.
according to you? Hmm.
Yeah, this is a it's a genuine problem. I know everyone, I mean, many people face this. And so identify, see, there are social media networks, right? And the best to actually consider is LinkedIn. You can find people who are publishing every now and then. In fact, you have many student organizations now. I won't be naming any, you're all aware of them. You can actually enroll in them, you can involve in research, and you can also approach people on, let's say, you can email people, right? You can even message them, you can drop in a message on LinkedIn saying, I'm impressed with your works, I've read your works, I want to learn from you. So it's as simple as that, right? And I think this is the best way you can actually reach out. And the most important point is to actually reach out, and not get disappointed that you don't have people in your vicinity who are interested in research. Things don't work in our way. Our environment is not in our control. But you should be proactive enough to explore and find people in networks such as LinkedIn and Twitter, and email them and get in touch with them.
Got it. Thank you. Our next question is someone is asking, Sir, I'm writing a research manuscript. How do I do a plagiarism check? Are there any good platforms which are free?
Plagiarism is a different topic, but yeah, plagiarism is something you'll have to check, especially if you're unsure of whether the similarity index is high or not in your paper. Industry standard is all I recommend. Authenticate is industry standard. Turnitin, basically the same thing. The free ones I don't recommend at all. There are many, Grammarly Premium and here and there, and these ones, they're not recommended. They're not used by journal editors themselves. So I would consider actually using Authenticate or Turnitin. The free ones, I'm not aware of free ones. I don't use free ones. I don't recommend you to use free ones either. You can get in touch with people who have access to Authenticate, who have access. There are some services online which provide it for a cost. You can consider that as well, but please don't uh, rely on free plagiarism checkers.
Okay, sir. The next question is someone is writing, I'm a first year MBBS student. I just entered a medical college. I don't know that much about medical stuff. How do I start research?
So first year is not a year where you should be starting research. You can involve, you can collaborate, you can involve in, let's say, I myself the only thing I did in first year was to acquaint myself with research, understand the different technicalities involved behind research, and I also enrolled myself in a multi-centric international study where I just did data collection, because data collection is not something that you need expertise in. So try to involve yourself in research, right? But don't initiate research. You're not in a stage where you can initiate a research paper and write it, because you don't have knowledge, like you mentioned already. So this is the time where you learn, this is the time where you understand how research is done, and this is the time you actually also look out for mentors, right? It's This is the initial phase of your career, so you don't start off by initiating research projects in final year. Ideally, maybe second year or third year, it makes more sense.
Understood. I have one last question for you.
Yeah.
You mentioned about a multi-centric research study for first-year students or anybody that wants to get started.
Yes.
How did your journey begin, or how does one approach a situation like this if one is interested?
So I'll just give you what happened in my situation. So my mentor was one of my seniors, and he made sure that our institution was in it had enrolled itself in a multicentric study. And neuro is something I was interested in, and like I said, you need to identify your field of interest. You'll find people, and make sure that you're in touch with you keep a tab of all research multicentric studies that are happening all over the world. For instance, in my case in neurosurgery, there was the GNS study, there was GNOS study that's ongoing. So these studies are initiated by mostly US universities, and they make it multicentric in nature, where you need to um, pursue your university, your college, your department to enroll in that study and do some kind of data collection. Because what happens is, once you involve in it, you understand how research works to some extent, and you learn how to operate platforms like Redcap or Orion, and you feed data, you understand how data is collected. And after that, you also end up getting authorship. It's a collaborative authorship model where hundreds of authors are involved all over the world, and they usually get published in big journals like Lancet. So uh, what I would recommend you to do is to actually first determine your field of interest, and then follow um, different universities, different university handles, different research teams, labs on Twitter. They keep announcing different multicentric studies. You need to pursue your college department, your professors, to enroll in them. become a part of the research team that's collecting data and upload data, and that's how you learn.
All right. And we have one last question. What are the different approaches to data collection?
Approaches to data collection, no? That's something that completely depends on the type of study you're wanting to conduct. So let's say you it's a survey based research, so data collection can be done online. You can just send the survey to as many people as you want. And then you have data collection, patient data collection, where you go to the wards, you check the clinical parameters in electronic health records. And sometimes you don't even have to go to the wards. You can just ask the if you have a hospital system in your college which maintains a database of different patients and its data and their data. You can actually just ask them to provide you with the patient details. From if you have to provide them with parameters like I want all patients with X disease admitted from X time to Y time. I want all the patients. So they'll hand over the Excel sheet to you. And this is basically data that's already collected. You just have to analyze it. It's retrospective in nature. So approaches to data collection, it completely depends on what kind of study you want to do.
Understood. So that's all for the questions that we have. Thank you so much. Truly an amazing session. It was very refreshing to see you talk about the art of writing the research paper rather than completely relying on AI or Chat GPT for research, how people are promoting these days.
Right.
So, wonderful session, in my opinion. Thank you so, so much for your time. I'd like to invite Mr. Saurabh Kumar for his vote of thanks. Sir, if you can take over.
Hello, everyone. And first and foremost, I'd like to express my gratitude to our speaker, Mr. Vinay Suresh, for sharing his valuable ideas on research methods. And also, thanks to all the attendees as well who decided to join us, sparing their time and showing interest so that they can contribute to healthcare research by learning some of the tips given by our speaker today. And lastly, I am grateful to our whole ThinkMED team, especially our moderator come joint secretary Rudrakshi, who has handled so well this talk, and our president Vaibhav Singh, whose efforts made this means wonderful event come true. And personally, I feel very connected because I was not aware about Mr. Vinashwari's field of interest, and that was neurology. Because I had also started lately I mean, getting involved in researches, medical research, and I also published two papers as a co-author related to field of neurology itself. So it was a quite impressive talk, and I personally felt very nice to be a part of this talk. And yes, and that's enough. And on the closing note, which is most important actually, attendees who are attending this session, uh, please get in touch with us for future sessions and many interesting events which are coming along the way, because we'll have many webinars and many studies or quizzes organized by our ThinkMed team, which will help you to pursue your interest, whether it is academic or healthcare research. And especially, I would like to mention a very important upcoming webinar, which is directed towards academic knowledge and research related to emergency medicine by one of renowned professors of KGMU itself. So please get tuned, stay connected with us on social media handles, and thank you everyone for attending, for making this a successful talk. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.